Good morning, everybody out there. Welcome to Facebook Live, the Coaches Chat, New York Roadrunners. Beautiful day here in New York. Hopefully it's a beautiful day out where you are, wherever you're joining us from, all over the world. Drop in your shout outs, drop in your questions. I know a lot of people out there are probably getting ready for marathon training. It is the wonderful season of marathon training, or maybe you're training for a half marathon, some of the race. Maybe you're going to be joining us Saturday in Central Park for the Front Runners for a 4-mile race, the LGBTQ Front Runners 4-miler. 43rd running of that race. We're joined here today by Richard White from Front Runners and Dr. Jennifer O'Connell from Hospital for Special Surgery. Richard, 43rd year. Your first year was 1995 of this race. Talk about all those years doing this race.
Yeah, it's been it's grown quite a bit. It was only a few hundred runners back when I first ran it, and that was, as you said, 95. This is my 25th year, 25th.
Times to know when you go around that race, you see everybody cheering you on. It's hard not to be excited and feel good.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, over the last few years, like this year, we've got over 11,000 people in the race. It's great, and it's a bit of a street party. You know, I always say that the New York City Marathon is sort of the one day you get unrequited love from all the people in New York City. And I think in some sense, the Pride Run is you get that as well. And you get so many different, not just LGBTQIA people who come out and run it, and the front runners, but you get so many allies.
Yes.
It's like I say, it's a street party. People dress up. It's lovely. And though it may be a little warm, it's just a great experience. And it makes us sort of share the love, so to speak, every year.
Hopefully it won't be too warm and too humid, but runners, if you're running it, drop in your questions, drop in your shout outs. Let us know where you're listening from. Dr. O'Connell, you had just moved up here from Miami. We were talking earlier. Up here in the Northeast, we're just getting into summer running. You moved up here like end of last year, so you're used to heat, humidity. You were talking earlier. You know, obviously you've been here. You just recently went for your first run in Central Park. So talk about your move up to New York and all the newness that you're enjoying up here.
Thanks, Coach Ben. I moved up here in December, and the first thing I did, literally the day I landed, I went and bought some cold weather running gear. I discovered I got this great running track that runs the entire length of the city, just outside my apartment. I can run up to the Little Red Lighthouse under the George Washington Bridge and back. That's just around a half marathon distance. I can run all the way down to the lower tip, down to the Brooklyn Bridge and back. And if I want to go even further, I don't have to worry about doing it out and back. I'll just find a subway and ride home.
And that's the best thing about New York is you literally can just go one direction. You have a subway card or tap in with the OmniPay, as we all can do now, and you're home before you know it, runners. But I really enjoyed it. It is getting warmer out there. We will dive into some warm weather running tips. But again, if you have any questions, we have Richard White here from Front Runners New York, Dr. O'Connell potentially joining us. So let's kind of dive into the Front Runners New York LGBT Pride Run 4-miler. Richard, you said it has been a 5-mile in years past. I did run it. We had our 5-milers. We all know the end of the race. We have our wonderful the festival that's done. But talk about the history of the race. Talk about why it's placed on the calendar, where it is, and the importance of the community and what's happening in New York around that time.
Okay. Front Runners has been around since 1979, and soon after we started having, I wasn't around then, but we started having an annual race, and it's usually timed with Pride Weekend, which is now Pride Week and Pride Month.
As it should be.
As it should be. And so it's always the Saturday before the Pride March on Sunday, the last weekend in June. So we've always had it that morning, 8 or 9 o'clock, and it celebrates who we are as a community and as a club. It started, as I said, it started very small, a few hundred runners, and now 11,000. It's a great experience, but it's always timed with Pride Weekend. It's one of many different events that weekend, and we get it out of the way before the march, so that we also march on Sunday as well, the front runners, and so we get our exercise in on Saturday morning, and on Sunday is time to party.
It is a party. I've been to Pride. I've been to the parade before. Incredible. I talk about, emotion. Talk about just the city really coming out and supporting, capturing everything it's about. It's great. It is the whole weekend. You come, you do the race on Saturday. You go enjoy yourself. You celebrate. You party. Yeah. It is supposed to be a month. Really, it is a year round. It should be something that we celebrate and embrace all the time. Really should be that way. But again, 1995 was your first. I looked it up. You have done 330 New York Roadrunner races.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've done a few. I guess that averages out to about like 15 a year or whatever. But be that as it may, it's been quite I've really seen the race grow. I've seen New York Roadrunners grow and front runners as well. You know, we've gone from the days of cotton T-shirts to the days of moisture wicking singlets. So we are progressing, and that's a good thing. And so, you know, I have to say, it's a lovely. You know, it's not just a competitive race, and every club has this sort of dichotomy of, are we a track club, a competitive club, or are we a social club? And we deal with that as well. And the answer is both.
Yeah.
And so that is on display on that morning, and it is really an expression of who we are and the pride that we have in ourselves. Yeah. And I work with the Beginners Clinic. I help coach them, and I always, last Saturday we had our last class. It's a 10-week class, and I told them, I said, you know, when you're out there and you're running up the hill and you're hot and you're sweaty and you just want to finish the race, and it's a competition, you also have to remember this is an expression of who we are. Okay. It's expression of support for the community. It's expression of not just yourself, but all of us. And you know, and every time I talk about it, I get a little choked up, but. You know, it's an expression of love to some extent, and in New York City, we're so lucky that there's so much support here and so much love for us, and clearly, if you're signing up for a race, you know what you're getting into, but you're also signing up for as a person who supports LGBTQIA rights and Front Runners New York.
Dr. O'Connell. Granted, for the Northeast, we're kind of getting hot. It's a bit warm today. We're looking at this Saturday. Thankfully, won't be as hot as this past weekend. Everybody who just did the Achilles hope and pop possibility on Sunday, you have my eternal love and support for being out there. That was a tough day out there. This weekend, still looking pretty warm and humid out there. You just moved up here, so you're very used to hot, humid weather. You probably get some great ideas. For runners who are getting up, maybe they're entering their summer training, just getting started. What can they do before the race to kind of help them between now and Saturday? What should they be doing? And then more importantly, when they wake up and then after that gun goes off, what are some tips to help them hopefully have a successful 4-miler?
So the most important thing, and since we're all runners here, I'm just going to put it out there, you are not going to PR at this race. It's going to be hot. Your pace will slow down once the weather gets warmer. So just enjoy the moment and have fun. Now, you want to start hydrating today, really, a few days prior to the race. Increase your water and your electrolyte intake. And on Friday, the day before the race, you want to increase your sodium as well if you're able to do so. That's going to cause you to retain water, and it's also going to increase your thirst. You're going to want to avoid drinking on Friday night. Alcohol will cause you to be dehydrated. And in the morning, if you can, avoid caffeine and energy drinks. They tend to increase your body temperature, which you're trying to keep cold for the race. Now, before you leave for the race, make sure you've got your SPF on and that you're wearing some cool wicking singlets, just like you talked about before, instead of that cotton shirt. On your way for warming up, don't do anything super aggressive. Really just kind of do some gentle calisthenics, a little easy stretching, just get your body moving. You're not going to be generating a lot of heat. When you get to the start, take it easy for the first half mile, which I know is going to be a little tough in this race, but don't set out to kill it. Just let your body warm up gradually through the race. Stop at every rest stop to get water and electrolyte drink if you can, and take another glass of water and pour it on your head. It'll make it feel a lot cooler.
You made the comment about SPF, sunscreen. Super important, even in the cloud cover. Is there anything that you would recommend the runners do? Is there a certain like a higher SPF, or is there brands out there that maybe runners can use? I mean, we want to take care of our skin. As runners, we're out in the sun, especially this time of year, down in the Southeast where you were, very hot. What are some recommendations on there? I think runners don't always hear this part, but it's very important because we are exposing our skin.
So the number in SPF, the 50 as an example, I wear 50 when I go out running, and the main purpose of that is it tends to provide protection a little bit longer. You may not be able to stop and reapply while you're out there, and you're going to sweat off quite a bit. So a good SPF 50 sports sunscreen would be what I'd recommend.
Very important. We all want to have a good time. We all want to be running for life, as they say. You want to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves. You don't want to have little spots. I mean, I'm getting a bit older. I think, and you want to take care of ourselves. We get to do this. You never take it for granted. Richard, you spoke about it after the race. Obviously, Sunday, we had the whole parade. We could talk about recovery and cool down. Really, the festival that we have after the race in the mall. I heard we're gonna have popsicles again. That's one of the best things about this race.
You got it.
Those popsicles are to die for, people. They are. We had them at the Citizens Queens 10K, and it was a surprising light, and runners were over the moon. I mean, nothing better than a popsicle after a hot day on a race. Talk about recovery a little bit. You're coaching the beginners. Do you have anybody first-time runners out there maybe joining this year?
We do have a few. We typically have about 300 front runners, but from the beginners we have about 20 or so. Wow. And so we've been training them for 10 weeks to run 4 miles. And they're very good at running 4 miles right now. And they've actually have sort of a leg up on people who are just showing up and running the race. So we made them run the course again and again and again. So there will be no surprises. They know Cat Hill really well. But as far as all of that, as far as recovery and all of that goes, a couple of things. I've told them how to approach the course. It's good to have a strategy for the course based on the changes on the course, and of course based on the weather. If it's going to be too hot and that sort of thing, you need to slow the hell down. But the way the course works is the last 1/10 of a mile, as you know, is taking a left towards the finish line onto the transverse. And I always tell them the same thing. It's 1/10 of a mile of fabulous. And fabulous means you better look your best. The photographers are going to be there. Pictures on social media are forever. So start looking good and you'll feel better. That's cross the finish line very well. Once you cross the finish line, telling people to start stretching is that's not going to happen. We're living in the real world. People aren't going to stop and start doing quad stretches. So what you're going to do is walk through, get your water, get your popsicle. I'm usually at that point going, give me my damn popsicle because it's 4 miles and I'm hot and it's so lovely. And so anyway, you get the popsicle and you talk and everybody sort of, backslapping and I'm glad it's over and that sort of thing. A good idea actually is to do a little bit of stretching if you can. If you remember to do it, I don't see a lot of people doing it after races. It's not a bad, you don't have to reinvent the wheel, not an hour of stretching. Get a little quad stretch, get a little hamstring stretch, calf stretch. Do what you know to do. Do it for a few minutes. It's good to get your goodie bag and get your water. Keep the water going because you may not be thirsty anymore, but your body still needs some liquids. And so get that, hydrate a bit. It's also not a bad idea to get a little protein in your body within 30 to 60 minutes after a hard run. And this is especially true for much longer runs. 4 miles it may be, those of us who run marathons know it's even more important. But it's a good idea to get a little something there. And then if you can, later that afternoon, you get home and you're not partying too hard, then do some foam rolling, do some light stretching at home. If you have a Theragun, that's great. Do whatever you can to help out. I mean, this distance isn't a killer versus the marathon, but at the same time, you want to take care of your body, keep drinking water, eat something light, and keep taking care of yourself. Just because you crossed the finish line doesn't mean you crossed your life finish line. You've crossed the race finish line, and there are many more races to go. So take care of yourself.
Yeah, I mean, Jen, you've done 10 marathons, usually a lot down in the Miami area. You talked about training for a 5K, very similar to the 4 miler we're having. Anything else you can kind of give tips for the runners after the race to kind of help them get ready for whatever may lie ahead?
So another thing I would recommend, I would add to what you said, was that once you cross the finish line, even if you're walking, just keep moving. It is possible that you may get lightheaded if you stop, so just keep moving. As far as continued training, consistency is the most important thing. Finding a club that you like to run with where you've got some friends and you have a social aspect of it can help tremendously as well.
That social piece, I think accountability, we always talk about that. If you know someone else is going to be there and you're not alone, I mean, how fun is that? I mean, front runners, we see them on Wednesday nights, you're beginning your marathon training program, Dr. O'Connell's looking for a social group, right? Drop some tips for the doctor in here. Give us some clubs out there that hopefully Jen can go find a new club. She's over here on the west side because she wants to find a social club out there to have a good time. Give us some ideas, give us some tips. Go check them out, you'll find your group. Christina, do you have any shout outs or questions coming in yet?
Yes, we would like to shout out Ambrose Chamberpot for tuning in, as well as Joseph from Roselle, New Jersey.
New Jersey coming in. Any questions? Yeah, we're going to keep on moving through there. We're good to go. Okay, we'll keep on moving. But if you have questions, let us know what's going on. One of the great things this year, this is the first year of the partnership with Front Runners and HSS. Really, it's an important thing. Healthcare, we always talk about it. Since we hear about it all the time on the news, it's vital. We need it. It's a very important. So, Dr. O'Connell, this is the first. This is the first partnership with FRNY. From a provider standpoint, from what if patients come and talk to you, come to people at HSS, how do those partnerships bridge the health equity gaps facing the LGBT community in healthcare?
Well, representation is everything here, and having an affirming doctor who is willing to work with the community allows patients to trust them and open up a relationship they otherwise would not have been willing to have. And it allows us to do our job better as physicians, because if a patient opens up, we can do our best job to help them out.
Yeah, and on the flip side, Richard, again, healthcare, we talked about it a bit more. We won't dive in too deep, but we all have a similar thought. It's a critical resource for the community. I don't care where you are. In terms of the LGBTQIA plus community, why are partnerships with providers so important? What are they giving? What do they provide? Really, what's happening there?
Well, it's important not just because of a possible running injury and that sort of thing, but I think primarily my view on it is it's a mental health issue. Suicide rates are so high among LGBTQIA people, and we need to address that a bit more in this country. And I think that it's extremely important to have folks like HSS as part of that. It's something we need to resolve in this country. There's a bit of I always say one of the things that makes front runners stronger is a lot of us come from some past of adversity or some realization about ourselves or something that's difficult. It's different areas of difficulty in our lives, and you have to. It's a hurdle in a sense, no pun intended. In this situation, it's something you go through. It's something you realize about yourself. And I think some people go through that very differently. I think it's harder in the past than it is now necessarily, but they're in this country and in this world, understanding who you are and fitting into the LGBTQIA community is really important, and to understand that there are folks like HSS and allies out there to help us out. In Front Runners New York, we're just, we're a small part of that. We show up and we do our runs, and it's all very social, and we're all very supportive, just like lots of running clubs are that way. Achilles, same thing. People who have gone through certain situations and they have challenges, and they have that community and that structure to help them out. And I think that folks like HSS can really certainly be part of that. I mean, and has been. And I think that we recognize that, and I think that it's a tough world in a sense, and especially in the last few years. And I think that we have to relieve a little bit of stress, and we have to bring the temperature down. And I think it's a very important thing. And I'd say this weekend is really important for people in our community to understand that and realize that you're not alone. We're part of a community. We're a found family, and that's very important, and HSS is part of that found family.
And then from a community standpoint, sometimes the referrals we get from our community members that we know for providers is key. And so you've been in other groups and running groups. How important is that when you have that a recommendation to go to a health provider? What kind of confidence does that give that person, knowing that if he's going, I can go, I'm going to feel more comfortable? How important is that in that sense?
Well, it's extremely important. In an organization like HSS, we're known as a world leader in musculoskeletal care. Knowing where your patient is going to or coming from, knowing you can trust them, knowing you're going to get some good communication as far as what's going on, and follow through is absolutely critical, because it's oftentimes, at least as a physiatrist, not a matter of fixing an injury and sending the patient back out and never seeing them again. We care for the patient longitudinally. We look at the patient as a whole person, including their biomechanics. A lot of times a patient will come in to see me, and they're complaining of their shoulder, but I'm going to watch them walk too because I want to see what they're able to do as far as all of their biomechanics. We stand by our patients, so having someone you can trust and having a reliable referral source is absolutely critical in that regard.
I love that. And Richard, you talked about the temperature a little bit. Unfortunately, we hear on the news laws being enacted across the country. It's very traumatic. You talk about the mental health side. It's unfortunate, in the health community and in any community out there, you hear, a limiting to healthcare is a very challenging place to be when you're trying to get through the day sometimes. So how is that impacting the future? We'll speak more specifically to the LGBT community, but when we hear about those laws being enacted, you talk about the mental health a bit more, the overall feeling. I'm sure you maybe talk to some of the people in your group, your friends you have. What is the sense there, and when we hear about those things, unfortunately, on a daily basis?
Well, it's hard to predict what's going to happen. We can only, it's almost like racing. It's sort of hard to say, but a lot of times I find like if you train for a race, it's sort of like life. You carry over stuff from racing and training, which is a bit of a cliche. But sometimes you expect the worst and you hope for the best. I don't expect the worst, but I think with the political climate, in some places it's tough. There are some places that won't allow a pride march. Some towns in the United States, and some parts of the world, rather harsh penalties just for being gay. And so I think that we need to constantly remind those of us who need it, and those maybe who don't need it, that there's hope. We will have, we do the best we can through community sharing and through something like the Pride Run and the Pride March and all the events this weekend. And I think it's very important to understand that we are not alone. We are out there. We're really not going anywhere. We have to fight it to some extent. And everybody fights things differently in their own way. And I think that we need to understand people. There's an old saying: you can't change humanity. You can only understand it. And I think that the more we understand where people are coming from and the political situation, the more we can come up with solutions and that sort of thing. It's a bit vague, but what can we do? We gotta fight where we can fight. And thank goodness we're in New York City where it's a bit more tolerant. So let's face it.
Yeah, and when we look at where people are coming from, the use of pronouns in today's world, doctor, is very important, and making sure that we address people as they see themselves, as they want to be addressed. So you talked about trust within provider and patient care. So talk about why it's important that healthcare providers use the proper pronouns when talking to their clients and when it comes to impacting their healthcare.
Well, it's a simple matter of respect. If you spend the 2 seconds it takes to understand the patient's pronouns, you're going to spend some time and you're clearly going to care for your patient. Now, HSS gives me a little cheat code whenever I look at a patient's chart. I see their preferred name, their preferred gender presentation, and their preferred pronouns right on the chart. I don't need to ask. But if I wanted to, it's as simple as saying, "Hi, I'm Jen O'Connell. I use she, her pronouns. How would you like me to address you?"
It's not. It's that simple, right?
It's really that simple. And for people who don't care, you haven't offended them. For people who do care, you've just made a gigantic step in gaining their trust as a patient.
And if you make a mistake, say you're sorry.
If you make a mistake, you apologize, you ask what you can do better, and you move on.
I think that's critical. I've had to learn that. I have a teenage son, a lot of his friends. I have a young, so my wife and I have really grown in that space. It's so important. Take a moment. It doesn't take much to put a smile on someone's face and really see them for how they see themselves. So Richard, on the same side, being addressed with the proper pronouns is so important. So how is it seen by people who, if they go by they, them, or she, they? How important is that for that they are addressed correctly?
Well, it comes back to how you perceive yourself and your identity. And so much, with front runners, we're definitely very attuned to that, and we have to be, and good for us. And so I think that, as Jen was saying, it's just it's simple manners. And some people have issues with pronouns and using pronouns they don't quite understand. It's human nature to not like something you don't understand. And so, but at the same time, I think those of us who've been alive long enough to remember the 20th century when this didn't happen, we kind of, it's just pronouns. Have respect for somebody. Use the pronouns that they want to, that they are comfortable with and who they are. And, I think it's a no-brainer. And so, we embrace that, and as the front runners do, and I think a lot of folks in our community, and I think it's a great thing. So what's the big deal? It's how people identify themselves. Have respect for them. Show a little love towards them, and as Jen says, it makes a world of difference. It's who they are, and honor that.
No matter how you're addressing someone, you're using pronouns, you might as well use the right ones.
Simple, straightforward. I love that. It's so important. You mentioned the 20th century. My son refers to it as the 1900s. The 1900s, I'm like, really? Am I that old? The 1900s? Damn kids these days. They love them, strangle them, but that's how they refer to it these days. Yes, I was born in the 1900s, people. Accept that as fact. We have a good time. We'll wrap it up with one last thing. Hopefully positive. Jen, Dr. O'Connell, again, you talked about how HSS is taking steps with the charts, so you're seeing the patient, you have that cheat sheet. In those same things, what does the future of LGBTQI plus healthcare look like, and where is it going, and what kind of things are you seeing?
Well, that's something I'm very optimistic about. There's a lot of interest in specific LGBTQIA plus healthcare. We're starting to develop specialized training programs, fellowships in LGBTQIA plus care, as well as gender affirmation care as well. There's more training in the surgical aspect as well as the medical aspect. And as an educator, I see students showing more interest in the field. And I see that just expanding over time. Plus, if you're taking care of LGBTQIA plus patients, it's not only the right thing to do, it's good for business. And organizations that see that will grow their product.
And that's great to hear that there's a larger interest from incoming students that are more interested in this field. I mean, that's incredible to hear.
Absolutely. It's something I love seeing. My students have a big interest in providing long-term primary care for LGBTQ patients, and they are looking for places to learn how to do it.
And Richard, I mean, hearing that, that's got to be amazing, because you've alluded to before, not in the too far distant past, it wasn't the case. Unfortunately, and as you said, hopeful, we want to grow. But 40 years ago, we knew what was happening in this country. And think about that in the time period. What does the future look like, and for yourself, and for people in in the community, on your team, and how do they feel about it?
Well, to kind of cut to the chase, we're not going anywhere.
Good.
I don't see us going back to 1969 when Stonewall, but I don't see that. But I think that we see a future of some acceptance. I think there are bumps along the way. Many minorities have had difficult paths in the United States history. Without naming names, and I think that we're among them, and I think that it's going to get better. It gets better, to use a common phrase from a few years ago, and I think that it's positive. I think in the end, I think that as long as we have folks like HSS and New York Road Runners and all the lovely people of New York who are signed up for this crazy race in the park on Saturday morning, just remember that it's a form of self-expression, in a sense, not just another race. I think as an organization, Front Runners is positive. Good. And we see ourselves expanding and bringing in more folks, and I think that's always a good thing.
Definitely, again, it's all about the community. We talked about it earlier. You really want to kind of embrace that, wrap your arms around it, feel like you're part of something. It's a good place to be. Christina, do we have any more shout outs or questions coming? It's a quiet day out there in Facebook land. It's early, it's hot. They're probably all hydrating and not drinking coffee or electrolyte drinks before they get out there. Again, we all get to do this lovely sport of running. Jen, I didn't ask, how did you get into running? Why did you think that left, right was fun and you want to do it over and over again?
I mean, we're going back to when I was a little kid. It was just, you're kind of, it finds you. Basically, you want to do a sport you're good at. For some reason, I was always a really fast runner. And I started really running competitively as an adult, where I joined a club, and it was just an absolute blast getting to run with friends, train with friends. These are people who've become some of my lifelong friends and some of my best friends. And I can't picture life without running.
It's so, and that's what it is, really. People think, oh, running's it's a singular sport. How can you do it in a group setting? I can tell you, I have seen front runners in Central Park on Wednesday nights. You meet over there on 72nd Street. It is a large group. My Team for Kids runners are out there. Got group training out there. Richard, again, 1995 was your first. I think it was called the Lesbian and Gay 5 miler.
Yeah,
it was Lesbian and Gay Pride Run. I think I put Pride.
My spreadsheet says that. I wrote it out. My nerd race spreadsheet says that. Lesbian and Gay Pride Run.
I think that's what it was called initially back in 1995. But again, how did you get into the sport of running? Why do you come back, and why did you become a coach?
Okay, well, I got into it, and I'll say I got into it for revenge. Okay, I was one of those kids that with glasses and braces who was not picked for the, I was the last kid picked in the public school thing. And so I was sort of treated not so nice. This is we won't say when it was, but it was a while ago. So I was that nerdy little kid who was the brainiac in the class, and I didn't get picked. And I was terrible at physical education. And when I got into my 20s and 30s, I also realized I didn't want to put on a lot of weight and get out of shape. And so I started running, and then I signed up for a race, and I really enjoyed it. And probably my sense of I don't know, a sense of stick-to-itiveness or whatever you want to call. I had fun. I liked the community of it, and also I found out there was something I was physically okay at.
I've seen your times on our NYRR race results. He's very fast.
Well,
he's very good.
Thank you. I wish I was faster, but
we all do.
We all knew. Yeah, we all know about that special mental health issue. But anyway, so I got into it, and then I got into coaching because one of my favorite things is if I'm out there having a run and I'm not enjoying running up, say, Cat Hill or Harlem Hill or that sort of thing, it's a whole lot easier when you have company.
Right.
And this isn't the only motivation, but the beginner's clinic is sort of a way of giving back. And I could, and maybe it's a little bit of an enabling going on here at the same time. But you get a group of people and they want to learn how to do it. And if you've done it enough times, you don't have to go to school to run marathons. It helps, but you don't have to get a degree. And you know how it all works, and you know what to do and what not to do. And I like sharing that. And people go, I tell them, if you're running up a hill, swing your arms a little bit higher, look up at the top of the hill, make sure how far you have to go. It's okay to slow down on a hill, and all these sort of things. And it's sort of, they can learn. We all learn on our own and at our own pace, and we know what works and what doesn't. But getting out there and helping people to get used to this thing that I love, and they will hopefully at some point learn to love, then it makes a big difference.
It does.
And it's do what you love and share that with other people. So that's why I like to do it. And also I have a little bit of a sadistic side, run up the damn hill and get up there. What you looking at? So what's it to you? So I like that too, and and we all have sort of a love fest anyway, so it's great. And
then we as coaches, Jennifer, you took us on to a period of a moment to excel, a period to excel for having a rough patch. What was the term you shared earlier?
Opportunity to excel.
An opportunity.
We used that term when I was in the Air Force.
It's in those moments where you're struggling. You can look at it, you can try to flip it on its head, right? That's the whole idea with that idea?
Absolutely. Look at it as a challenge, but something that if you do really well, then you've conquered it. And I'm learning about hills too, because we don't have any of them where I'm from, so we're just getting used to them.
We have plenty here in Central Park, Prospect Park. Get up to Van Cortlandt Park if you can. Way up in the Bronx, the back hills will definitely test your desire to run, if you want to call it that. Any parting words for our folks out there? Hopefully you're getting some tips on some clubs out there from our runners, but any final words as our runners get ready to head off into Saturday?
Well, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak today. The main thing is that it really is a great party. You're going to have an absolute blast. Don't get the jitters at the starting line. We all do. It's going to happen no matter what. Go out, have fun. It's an absolute blast, and it's not going to be your last race.
I know you come out there. This will be a year of consecutive you doing this race for yourself.
This is my 25th Pride Run.
There you
so
go.
I have no one to blame but myself. But anyway, so it's going to be a lot of fun. And I would say get out there early. Look around the corral while you're standing in the corral and give that wary look and just look up at the trees and enjoy the morning. Live in the moment. Be aware of yourself. And then take it easy in the first mile up Cat Hill. It's a quarter of a mile, 90 feet. You're going to love it. And then the race starts once you get to the top of Cat Hill. And enjoy, keep your pace, and take it easy if it's too hot. And if it's your first 4-miler, you're doing a PR today. So enjoy it.
That's a coach right there. Your first is always your best and your fastest. Enjoy it. We get to do this. We get to put on our running shoes. We get to get outside and run. Don't ever take it for granted, runners. Hopefully we'll see you on Saturday. 8 a.m. is the start time. Give yourself time to get there, especially if you're dropping a bag. Get a little warm up in. Stay hydrated before. As Jen talked about, maybe hold off on the alcohol on Friday night. Save it for the party and the celebration, as Richard was alluding to, on Saturday. Hopefully see you at the Pride Parade if you're here local on Sundays. But Jen, Richard, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Ben.
It's an amazing partnership. Looking forward to it. Thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you at the start line.